The crystalline towers of Vex 7 gleamed like frozen tears against the planet's perpetual twilight. Eugene stood at the edge of the human settlement, watching the alien construction crews erect their magnificent spires, structures that reached toward the violet sky with mathematical precision. Each building was a testament to advanced engineering. Hexagonal frames of carbon lattice alloy, temperature-regulated walls that shimmered with embedded heating elements, and foundations that seemed to mock the very concept of cold. Primitive, muttered KX Thran, the Velcari site's supervisor, his translucent skin pulsing with amusement. You humans insist on this stone arrangement? Eugene didn't respond immediately. He continued rolling another boulder into position, his breath forming small clouds in the -40 atmosphere. The other workers, a collection of species from across the galactic consortium, had gathered to watch his project with barely concealed mockery. It's a circle, Eugene said simply, guiding the stone with practiced hands. Briar emerged from the partially completed structure, her cheeks flushed from exertion despite the cold. She carried another load of the local clay mixture they'd been preparing, her eyes meeting Eugene's with quiet determination. They'd been partners on this expedition for 2 years now, and she understood his vision even when others didn't. A circle of rocks, KX Thran repeated, his voice carrying that peculiar whistling quality that indicated Velcari laughter. No heating elements, no energy shields, no thermal regulation systems. Just stones stacked in a round pattern. That's correct, Briar said, setting down her burden. She wiped her hands on her thermal suit. Stones, clay, and a conical roof. The gathering of aliens erupted in their various forms of amusement. The insectoid Threx clicked their mandibles rapidly. The gaseous Aerolians shimmered with colors that their translators interpreted as derision. Even the normally stoic granite folk, silicon-based beings who appreciated solid construction, seemed puzzled by the humans' approach. You'll freeze within the first full wind cycle, predicted Clara, a Threx engineer whose compound eyes reflected the dying light. The polar winds of Vex 7 reached 300 kilometers per hour. Temperature drops to -90. Your stone house will become your tomb. Eugene straightened, his back aching from the day's work. Maybe, but stone has kept my ancestors alive for thousands of years. Your ancestors, KX Thran said, his tone patient in the way one might speak to a child, didn't have access to proper technology. We're offering you shelter in our facilities. Standard consortium housing. Climate-controlled, storm-proof, comfortable. Appreciated, Eugene replied. But we'll stick with our plan. The aliens dispersed, shaking their heads, or equivalent appendages, at human stubbornness. Only Briar and Eugene remained, continuing their work as the first moon of Vex 7 crested the horizon. They think we're insane, Briar said, mixing more clay. They might be right, Eugene admitted with a slight smile. But my grandfather built stone houses in Montana, survived winters that would have killed anyone in a modern prefab. This isn't Montana. No, he agreed, but cold is cold. Wind is wind. And circles. He patted the curved wall affectionately. Circles don't give the wind any corners to grab. They work through the night, and the night after, and the one following that. Vex 7's rotation gave them long periods of darkness, and they used every moment. The structure grew, a perfect circle, walls 2 meters thick, tapering inward to form a domed roof. They left a small opening at the top for ventilation and smoke, and a low entrance that faced away from the prevailing winds. The other species continued their own construction, towers and complexes that hummed with power and blinked with status lights. Modern, efficient, connected to the settlement's main grid. Then the storm season arrived. The warnings came 3 days in advance. The consortium's weather satellites detected the massive atmospheric disturbance forming over the southern ice cap. Wind speeds were projected to exceed 400 kilometers per hour. Temperatures would plummet to -105. Even with their advanced technology, the aliens began reinforcing their structures, increasing power to heating systems, and securing everything that might become a projectile. Last chance, KX Thran offered through the communication system. You can shelter with us. There's room. Eugene looked at Briar. She nodded. We're staying, he said. Foolish, the Velcari muttered. But there was something in his tone that might have been respect. The storm hit like a hammer from the heavens. Eugene and Briar huddled inside their stone house as the wind screamed across Vex 7's surface. They prepared a small fire in the center. Nothing fancy, just burning local biomass for warmth. The smoke curled up through the roof vent, and the stones around them began to radiate heat. Outside, the storm raged with apocalyptic fury. They could hear debris hammering against the settlement structures, the whine of overtaxed heating systems, and the occasional crack of something breaking. But inside their circular stone house, the wind found no purchase. It flowed around the curved walls like water around a river stone. The thick barriers absorbed the cold, and the thermal mass they'd built up over weeks of careful preparation kept the interior remarkably stable. The temperature inside hovered around 10 degrees Celsius, cold, but survivable with their thermal clothing and the small fire. Briar leaned against Eugene, both of them wrapped in insulated blankets. "It's working. Stone doesn't argue with wind," Eugene said quietly. "It just is." The storm lasted 4 days. On the fifth day, when the winds finally subsided and the temperature stabilized at a merely frigid -60, Eugene and Briar emerged from their house. The settlement looked like a war zone. Several of the alien towers had suffered damage, cracked windows, broken heating elements, and one entire structure had its top section sheared off by the wind. The consortium's emergency teams were working frantically to restore power and repair life support systems. 3 species had to be evacuated to the underground bunkers when their housing units failed. The stone house stood unchanged. The same circle of rocks, the same conical roof, the same humble entrance. Not a stone had shifted. Dakax Thran approached slowly, his translucent skin now pulsing with colors Eugene had learned to recognize as contemplation. Behind him, a delegation of engineers and architects from various species followed. "Your structure," the Valkyrie began, then paused. "It survived without power, without technology, without any of our systems." "Yes," Eugene said simply. Clarius' compound eyes studied the stone house with new appreciation. The circular design, it distributes wind pressure evenly. No weak points. And the thermal mass, added a granite folk engineer, running a silicon appendage along the wall. It absorbed heat slowly, then released it slowly. Natural regulation. Briar smiled. Sometimes the old ways work because they've had thousands of years to prove themselves. In the weeks that followed, the consortium's architects studied Eugene and Briar's stone house extensively. They measured, analyzed, and calculated. Their reports went back to the central planning committees on dozens of worlds. The next settlement construction on Vex 7 incorporated circular stone foundations beneath the advanced structures. Other harsh environment colonies began requesting information on primitive thermal mass construction techniques. The Galactic Consortium's building codes were quietly updated to include reference to human architectural wisdom. KX Thran never apologized. His species didn't have that cultural concept, but he did bring Eugene and Briar a case of Valkyrie warming crystals as a gift. "Perhaps," he said, his skin pulsing with colors that might have been sheepishness, "we were too quick to laugh at your round stone house." Eugene accepted the gift with grace. "In my grandfather's time, they would have said, 'Don't fix what isn't broken.' And if it survives the storm," Briar added, watching the alien crews now mixing their technology with human simplicity, "maybe it was never broken to begin with." The stone house stood on Vex 7 for the next 50 years, becoming something of a landmark, a reminder that sometimes the simplest solutions, tested by time and hardship, could outlast even the most advanced technology. And in the galaxy's expanding collection of human achievements, one more story was added to the growing legend: humans who built with stone what others built with stars.